All right. Well, I'm sorry. It looks like I'm having some technical difficulties. It keeps saying there's an error contacting the server. I've tried to get the link out both in the chat of the old Hangout and in both photocracy groups. I realize no one has joined yet, but I do want to get started because there are tons of questions that kind of came in today. Um, so, um, again, sorry about that. I'm just going to get started here and let's see. All right. So hello to everyone. I hope your week is going well. Um, if I sound a little bit different, have been fighting a cold all week, so please forgive me if I sound a little bit off or different. Sorry about the sniffling. Left my cold medicine at work. I'm a little bit foggy brain, so please pardon me. Um, Before I get on to the questions, there are a few administrative things I want to mention. First, the class is set up to have a continuation group after the initial 8 weeks. So if you want to keep working with the group, you can sign up for that. I'll provide the link as we kind of get a little bit closer. Um, the first EFL group is ending soon, so you guys already have that link, and I'll provide it to the other group soon. Related to this point, Dana, you had asked a question. As I continue to lose weight, won't I want to change my nutrition and exercise guidelines? Will you be giving us some advice now or later on how to do that? All right, so if you don't want to participate in the continuation group, I will definitely provide on the last week some guidance and general guidelines about how to adjust things based on results going forward. Very simple, a simplification of that would be if the scale and measurements both don't move down for more than, say, 2 weeks in a row, and there doesn't seem to be a downward trend, I'd probably leave the protein the way it is and then adjust calories 100 or 200 calories downward, and then give it maybe another week or two and kind of see how things change in response. As far as exercise goes, you can pretty much continue as normal, or you can try new exercises and things like that. If you have a specific exercise goal, you probably just want to focus your whatever exercises you're doing, whatever will get you to that goal specifically. Secondly, I wanted to mention there were some changes made to Photocracy recently that affect the group, which is a good thing. There are many more options related to the notifications, but some settings may not have carried over. So I noticed this when people were replying to each other and replying to my posts, and I usually get an email as soon as anything happens, and I wasn't getting them. So if you look under your profile in the top right-hand corner on the website, and then go to account settings and then notifications, you should be able to see all of them. There's an email icon. If it's blue, you're getting a notification for it. And then there's, I believe, a mobile phone symbol to the right of that, which indicates whether or not the update will get pushed as like a badge on your phone. And also, there are separate notifications solely for private messages. You'd have to go into private messages first, and then click on the gear icon in private messages to see that if you're getting the correct notifications for private messages. So that works both ways, meaning you can turn them. You have a little bit more control over which emails you're getting and when, so you can turn some off, turn some on. So I think that's a great improvement. In addition to that, in the group itself, there are more options on the left-hand side. So now you can click sticky posts, which will show you everything that I've stickied. Posts from me only, so if you just want to kind of filter through what I've said recently, and then posts for the entire team. You can also solely filter out workouts that everyone's doing, just to kind of see what everyone's doing, give them some props and comments. I think this is very helpful because if you're looking for something specific, it should be a lot easier to find now. Right, that covers kind of the administrative stuff. And to get right to the questions, the first question comes from Anne Marie, and this is a great question, so thank you for asking it. She asked, seems like the prevailing opinion of Photocracy is that Photocracy is anti-cardio. If I'm concerned with my health as well as body composition, can I really get there without cardio? Of course, at my size, just dropping some weight is healthy, but eventually to be heart healthy, I think I'll have to just go for a run. I'll answer this with a simple answer, and then I'll expand on that answer. The simple answer is yes. If you're concerned with overall health as well as body composition, you can achieve that without doing any cardio. the reason why that's a simple answer is because everyone has a different definition of what healthy is. But if you're going with what the medical profession defines as healthy, meaning like specific health markers such as cholesterol, blood pressure, etc., then simply by improving your body composition through the changes in your nutrition and getting some form of exercise, those markers will improve. And again, heart health depends on your definition. I would take that to mean more of like cardiovascular endurance. And as far as that goes, any activity that increases your heart rate for a certain period of time will help you make improvements both in your general health as well as heart health and endurance. So it doesn't have to be running specific. For example, I have some foot problems that make running rather difficult for me. So if I were looking to improve my heart health and improve health and fitness overall, I'd try to find a workout that simply raises my heart rate, above what it normally is, and keep it there. So I would, given my foot problems, I would look at something like barbell complexes, which are just a fancy way of saying lift weights faster, and that's kind of crossing the borderline into CrossFit a little bit, but it's not something that isn't as intense as CrossFit. It's meant to just be done for like, you do this exercise, switch to the next exercise, and there's no real rest periods. And it's done with much lighter weights. So it technically, I guess, is cardio, but it's done using weights. And then you can, as you improve at it, you can increase the weight to make it harder on you to continue to get the same basically level of exercise from it. To expand on what you said about Fitocracy seeming to be anti-cardio, I agree, but there's a specific reason for that. It's really the context that matters, and in this case, Fitocracy is anti-cardio for fat loss. So cardio being the primary mechanism for fat loss is a very poor return on investment of time. So when you see like other coaches or even just Fitocracy staff members or even other people saying no cardio, they're anti-cardio, they're referring back to the point about it not being required or necessary. For fat loss, your body adapts very quickly to cardio as an activity, and outside of things like wearing a weighted vest, it's really difficult to provide progressive resistance. So in those cases, you provide a harder workout by, upping intensity is one way to do it, but you basically provide more resistance through a greater time investment. Or if you don't do that, you simply don't get the same benefit because of your quick adaptation to the exercise. When you're in a calorie deficit, you have limited resources and willpower to put towards your fat loss. And all of these things combined are all stressors on your body, in addition to whatever stress you have from your normal life. So my belief is that you want to have everything be as automatic as possible and not having to be worrying about, okay, well, I did this run and this is getting easier. I'm going to need to make it a longer run, and then trying to figure out and rearranging your life to fit in more time to be able to get the same effect. I believe it's much less of a stressor simply to create the fat loss just through the calorie deficit and leave exercise to be something that's just for overall health, like we talked about. In addition, that exercise should be specifically to preserve muscle when you're trying to lose weight. So the opposite of that would be weightlifting. It provides unlimited progressive resistance, really, without ever needing to increase the time. If you're doing weightlifting, and you can do weightlifting safely, you could probably get away with an hour and a half to 2 hours a week max for the rest of your life, and you always have a way to increase the resistance, progress forward, and never really need to increase the time. There's like a sweet spot where anything more than that is just for enjoyment, but there's like a 30-40 minutes of weightlifting, and then you're done. After that is really just for your enjoyment. So I think the anti-cardio is a generalization with a good reason, and that mostly stems from people that are new to fitness. They think that becoming fit is a combination of eating bland foods and just doing cardio that's miserable to do so. And that kind of creates that negative feedback loop between exercise and nutrition, where people punish themselves when they overeat by going on a treadmill and like dreading every second and hating it. So with all of that said, I would never personally discourage someone from doing something that they enjoy. So if you enjoy running or you enjoy cardio, go for it. If you haven't ever run before but something that interests you, I recommend the program called Couch to 5K, and it basically takes you from uh, being couch potato and slowly, progressively moves you into being able to run a 5K. And there's like programming guidelines, meaning like if you can't uh, do one of the weeks as it's laid out, then you just repeat that week until you can. So it's all kind of laid out for you, and even have things where pre-made music playlists where Couch to 5K is essentially like you jog for this many minutes and then you sprint for this many minutes, and it like rotates back and forth. So they even have like music tracks you can download to whatever music player you have, that when the fast music's playing you run, when the slow music's playing you jog, when there's like crickets chirping you walk, something like that. So that might be worth looking into. um, if you've looked on my Photocracy feed for my activity, I do cardio. That includes, I do brisk walking on my lunches, just to kind of get out of the office, clear my head, stop staring at a computer screen for at least an hour, because I sometimes feel like I'm looking at a computer screen for all my waking moments. And then I'll also do some form of stationary cycling here and there, just as time allows. I'm not really strict about it. I don't look at it as I'm burning calories, but I'm just trying to counteract the fact that I'm stuck in a chair 10 to 12 hours a day, just to get some more movement in when I can. So I think that pretty much answers that question. If there's anything that's not clear, let me know, and I'll do my best to clear it up. Our second question also comes from Anne Marie, and her second question was, following up the intermittent fasting discussion, regarding leaving intermittent fasting and then having breakfast has been a mixed bag. Even if I miss having breakfast, I don't get distracting hunger. I'm finding that it is psychologically easier as an overeater to be faced with finding ways to get enough food or protein in the evening than it is to be looking towards the end of the calories when there's a lot of the day left. So now I'm back and forth, but I've heard that our bodies respond well to eating at the same time every day. Is there anything to that in your opinion? If I'm hitting my calories, is breakfast on 3 random days a week good or good enough? All right, similar to the last question, there's a very simplified answer. And then I can expand a little bit. The answer is, it depends. So unfortunately, that's the answer for a lot of things. But so our bodies do respond to a regular meal pattern through a hormone called ghrelin, and that's ghrelin, not gremlin. Everyone I've said that to says something about gremlins and eating after midnight. But so basically, when you eat as a pattern multiple times at the same time, this hormone starts to release at that time, and it makes you hungry. So if you don't eat breakfast and you eat your first meal of the day, like your lunch, at noon every day for 2 weeks, you'll start to have a hormonal change where you won't be as hungry in the mornings, and your hunger will start to shift towards when you're used to eating. And that's just so your body knows when you're used to eating, to signal you. That's like a evolutionary mechanism that exists prior to wristwatches and smartphones that just says, you usually eat now, it's time to eat now. So you can kind of change that to adapt, but there's an adaptation period. So if you don't eat breakfast for a few weeks in a row, your ghrelin hormone increases when you normally eat your first meal. So how you respond to doing that every day versus skipping breakfast sometimes is really going to differ person to person. Like I said, there is an adaptation period, similar to how if you do low carb for a while and you adapt to that, it's easier to go in and out of it without feeling like mood swings or energy swings and things like that. So, as always, focus on hitting your calorie goal primarily. And if you want to eat breakfast some days and not others, see how you feel and go from there. It seems like in Anne Marie's case, she's already gone through the adaptation period and it may be easy for her to switch. I'll say that's perfectly fine, but keep track of how you feel. Like if you're hungry, if you have low energy, you're in a bad mood when you're fasting, it's probably a good idea to get something to eat if you're going to be switching in and out of it. You really just listen to your body, most of all. I know that in many cases, listening to our bodies is how we kind of got to where we are in the first place, but if you're trying to hit your calorie goals and your body's telling you you're hungry, it's not really a problem. Just focus on the calorie goal primarily. So to offer some of my own experience in this regard, last hangout and some of the articles I've mentioned that I skip breakfast on days when I have something like a birthday party or a social obligation in the evenings. but on those days I don't eat breakfast. So this works for me, but it might not work for you because it's, like I said, it's possible on those days when you skip breakfast, you could be hungry by the time you get to your social obligation. That could result in you overeating or making the worst possible choice you could versus like the best bad choice. Um, you can counteract that a little bit by eating before the event lean protein, green fibrous vegetables, anything that has fiber in it, just to kind of fill you up. And that's what I do. But in the interest of full disclosure, there are times when I've fasted in the morning, skip breakfast, specifically to have room for whatever social event later in the day, and it has made me a little bit in a bad mood up until then, and that's the hangry. So play it by ear, see how you feel, and it may be something that you can try it a little bit and kind of incorporate more and more and see if it gets any better, or if you're just kind of noticing like, hey, I'm not a nice person when I do this, then you should probably not do it. So this segues nicely into a comment that Dana made about a really good habit that she's gotten into, and she said that she mostly front loads her protein regularly so that Dana has basically reached her protein goal before dinner time. And that Dana really enjoys the flexibility to be able to have whatever she wants for dinner, still be within her calorie constraints, and in doing so, this kind of steers her towards low-calorie, high-protein sources for any meals before dinner. But then there's the flexibility of you can fit in whatever you like and still meet your calorie goals. So Dana's using that as like an everyday strategy, and in doing so for her dinner and later meals, that opens up tons of options. And I think that's a great idea, and that I really do recommend that if you can get into that behavior. That's what I do, and it's pretty much the exact opposite behavior of waiting until dinner to get all your protein in. Doing it this way, if you get all your protein in earlier in the day, you're going to feel sorry about that. You're going to get all of your protein in earlier in the day. You're going to feel full the whole day. It takes more energy to digest that protein, so you're constantly digesting that protein, staying full all day long, versus getting a gigantic one meal of protein is horrible for digestion and probably would impact your sleep quality if you're eating all of your protein before bed. So that's a great idea, Dana. Thank you for bringing it up. And like I said, that's what I'd actually recommend you do.
Sidacracy says, Brandy10 mentioned you in a status post. Brandy10 wrote, just joined Team Extra.
I'm so sorry. I have this app that reads my emails to me out loud, and I switched to the Chromebook for the Hangouts, and it didn't turn it off, so I'm sorry. All right, so another question comes from Carolyn, and she asks, my weight itself hasn't been changing, but my measurements have shifted a bit in a good way. Is this muscle weight gain neutralizing the lost fat mass? Am I continuing to add muscle even though I've been working out pretty steadily for almost 6 months? The scale doesn't tell the whole story, but this is more for my edification, and it helps to put me in context to remind myself in the future when I get dispirited about a number. So what happens when measurements stall and the scale doesn't move? Do you recalculate macro goals? So that's a lot of questions, but the best way to answer them, I think, is to say that there are a few different things going on here. Women, unfortunately, have it a little bit more difficult when it comes to the scale because water weight can change cyclically in a given month. Men don't have that problem. So that kind of further compounds things, which can also play into the fact that there is possible muscle weight gain offsetting some of the lost fat mass, which, in addition to the possible muscle gain and the cyclical water weight changes, I don't have anyone on very aggressive calorie deficits like I mentioned last time. So it's possible that with minor muscle mass gains, cyclical water weight, and the not very aggressive calorie deficits, that the scale may not really budge or even move in the right directions. So when that happens and measurements stall, I'm not going to immediately say let's change something. I would kind of try to look at the trend and see if things seem to be moving down. adjusting something based on 1 week is a little bit tricky because you could have had higher carbs that week, you could have had more sodium. Some of the food you may have eaten may have been more volume in your stomach, and you couldn't have digested it yet. So all of those things could cause a higher weigh and could even cause a higher waist measurements just by having more food in your system. And eating more sodium and more carbs can also cause you to retain additional water over what I've already mentioned. So all of those things can bump the scale up, they can bump the measurements up in a given week. So if I see that looking at like it's a pattern, that's when I'd start to nudge your calorie goal downward a little bit, maybe 100, 200 calories, and leave protein the same. In the case of that happening, it would be entirely up to you if you would take those calories from carbs or fat based on your preference. My preference would be to take them from carbs because I personally feel more full long term from fats, so I try to keep fats a little bit higher if possible. But like many things, that is very individualized. All right, and Dana just commented that she sleeps better on protein and carbs. So front loading helps her at work, so I would be more awake. I feel the same way. I right before bed I try to have a protein and carb snack. I'm big on a big snack before bed, so that's when I eat my Greek yogurt and a bunch of berries. And I feel like in eating like that and eating protein throughout the whole day, I do feel like I sleep better. All right. I believe that covered the majority of the questions that were opened for the Q&A, but there is one thing I'd like to mention regarding some of the replies related to binges. So in the article that I wrote about binge eating and how things kind of stem from stress and emotions, and there are associated feelings and thought patterns that can lead to binges and keep a binge going, Kiwano brought up that a third possible trigger type, which is a biological or physiological trigger. So once you've been eating under your maintenance calories for a while, it's very possible that your body may need a temporary break where you need to eat at your maintenance or slightly above in order to restore hormone levels that are lowered simply as a result of being under your maintenance calories. Over a period of time, those hormones continue to drop and drop and drop and drop and drop. So it's very possible that if you are in that state where all those hormones are lower and you just feel hungrier all the time, you're low on energy, you're starting to obsess about food. I've been there, that there's times when I would really only watch like diners, drive-ins, and dives and just say like, I need a break. So combining being in that state and something with like a vacation or holiday can turn into a binge, and it's not necessarily emotional or stress-based. It's simply like your body just needs a rest, and you're combining it with something where everyone else is eating socially. So I used to be stuck in this pattern for vacations and holidays where I knew that I would gain 20 pounds on the scale every vacation, every holiday season. So as I mentioned before, this is my 6th year of doing this. That's been a problem for me for the first 5 years. This is the first year that I've really been able to conquer that problem. So that first 5 years was trial and error, and at some points I felt really down about it. I'd start to dread like holidays, like what am I going to do? And part of how much weight I would gain was that having lost so much weight, all those fat cells were just filled back up by water easily. Some of it was, I'm sure, was I didn't eat that high of sodium normally, and then I would eat a bunch of high sodium, high carb foods. But it just felt awful. Like, I'd be bloated, my pants wouldn't fit. At some points I'd even taken something to like quickly get rid of the water weight, but that's not a good thing. So finally this year I was able to conquer that. And one of the ways that I was able to do that was that since I kind of knew in advance, hey, when the holiday season is, when Thanksgiving is. Sorry about that. So you know when they are. So the idea is to kind of plan around them. So let's just say I guess it depends if you're American, how you feel about Thanksgiving. some people, like what I've kind of done is like Thanksgiving is Thanksgiving and the day after Thanksgiving for leftovers. Some people kind of turn it into a whole week holiday where it's like the day before Thanksgiving and then the whole week after that. So in those cases, what I'd recommend doing is the week prior, try to increase your calories either slowly, like add an extra 100 calories per day and slowly ramp up to your maintenance, or just eat at your maintenance calories a week prior. And if you know there are certain things that you're going to eat that you normally wouldn't eat, try to incorporate them in that week prior. Now you should have some more room for them because you've increased your calories a little bit. That way you're not going to like crave them and want to pig out on them during that. And it kind of will like mitigate the biological side of it, as well as allow you to kind of have what you want craving wise and fit it in. And that way you won't be so quote unquote desperate to shovel it in when you're kind of off the chain for the holiday or the vacation. So for me, that's worked this year, and I felt like I didn't lose control at any point. I wasn't feeling the physical hunger anymore from having increased my calories the week prior. I didn't feel powerless. So I was able to get to this point because I looked at the physical signs ahead of time. I learned to identify them, and I listened to my body. I knew going into the vacations that I was, in the past, almost like getting stricter because I knew the holiday was coming up and I knew that I'd probably overeat, when that's probably the last thing I should have been doing. I should have been ramping it up so it wasn't an abrupt change, and that way I could stay in control the whole time. So if you've been sticking to your calorie goal for weeks on end, meaning you haven't had any gigantic missteps and you kind of feel like you just physically need a break or even mentally need a break, and you have an upcoming like week-long vacation or multiple-day social event, taking a break prior is a great way to avoid overdoing it. So how to implement that is you probably want to figure out roughly what your maintenance calories are and try to get that amount. So how do you do that is there are tons of online calculators out there to kind of help you with that. I tend to go with a simple formula that for me, that my maintenance is somewhere around what I currently weigh, like an average for a week, times 12 or 13. So that's kind of what I figured out, trial and error, after having lost 200 pounds. That's the thing. So if you were to take someone that naturally weighs what I weigh, 215 pounds, and me, my maintenance unfortunately is going to be lower than someone that's naturally at this weight. That's kind of just a unfortunate side effect of having been obese and then lost it, is that your maintenance is going to be forever lower. You can gain muscle to kind of help compensate that, but you're still kind of going to it's just going to be naturally lower. Someone that was naturally at a weight and they kind of maintain their weight all the time, theirs may be a little bit higher, body weight times 14 or 15. But I'm going to guess it's not going to be, maintenance is not going to be lower than body weight times 10 in most cases. And it's one of those things, all these calculators and formulas, they are simply estimations. There's no formula out there that can describe exactly what yours is. It's really just trial and error. There are so many holidays in the calendar. You could try it for one holiday, and if you don't get it right, oh well, just move on and try it for the next one. All right, so that concludes everything that I had to go over. Are there any questions about what I said or things that I haven't covered? And I'll just leave that for a minute. And like I said, I'm sorry about the technical problems. I'm not sure what happened. I started the Hangout. I turned on the Q&A portion, and it kept saying connection error. And then it just dropped the Hangout and ended it. It wouldn't let me get back in, so I had to make a new one. Again, I apologize for that. Okay, and it looks like at least 2 other people had joined, so that's good at least. I'll just give it another minute. And as I always say, I know a lot of times as soon as I close the Hangout, you'll say, oh, I had a question. So please feel free to ask it, and I'll see if I can either wait till next week to answer it, or if it needs to be answered quicker than that. I'll just give it like 2 minutes, go from there. Off, and I'm sorry about technical problems, but again, thank you everyone for your questions. Thank you for watching, for listening, and talking to everyone soon. Have a good night. Bye bye.